Hello and welcome to episode 141 of The Thing About Golf, the podcast series from Golf Australia magazine searching for the elusive answer to that simplest of questions. What is the thing about golf? Rod Murray's my name, and just before I bring my colleague John Huggan into the conversation, a correction of sorts from our last episode. Now, those who listened will know that I chatted with the delightful Sir Bob Charles. If you haven't listened, go and do so. And we talked extensively about his book. But, of course, I forgot to mention where you could get it. My apologies for that. The answer here in Australia is Ryan Publishing. You can find them at www.ryanpub.com.au. That's RYANPUB.com.au. The book, if you happen to be overseas, is also available at Amazon and most online bookstores. So, apologies again for that. Sometimes I think I have a sieve for a brain. Well worth the read and well worth the listen to Sir Bob Charles. On to this episode, and I'm joined on the line now by John Huggan, who's been chatting with fellow Scot Andrew Coltart. Huggy, Coltart, a voice familiar to many through his TV work, but a player of not inconsiderable talent as well.
He was. I always feel a bit sorry for Andrew. He's one of the classic examples of a really good player. I mean, obviously won tournaments in Europe, won tournaments in Australia more than once, played in the Ryder Cup, did all the things that you're supposed to do. And then the game changed and he couldn't keep up. I remember I was doing my column for the Scottish newspaper Scotland on Sunday back in the day, and he gave me a little exclusive in that he was going to stop playing because he just couldn't keep up anymore. He just couldn't hit it far enough, couldn't swing fast enough. And I always think that it diminished the game a little bit, that it was so one-dimensional all of a sudden at the elite level that somebody like him didn't have a place. And I think it's to the game's detriment that is true, and it certainly is true. I mean, he just couldn't keep up. It's as simple as that.
It's an awfully sad way in some ways for a career to sort of be finished for you, isn't it? And he's not the only one. There's a significant portion of a generation of players. Bradley Hughes is another who was magnificent with a persimmon driver and a long iron, who just got left behind in the course of probably 2 or 3 years. There was a change in technology, and there was a whole slew of those players who just disappeared, and their careers sort of ended, and a shame in many ways. However, Andrew, as I said, lives on as a Sky Sports commentator, which he's very good at, partly, I think, Huggy, because he's a bit like our mutual friend Mike Clayton. He's interested in the game, but has interests outside the game, and he brings the lens of the things that he thinks about outside the game to the game. Does that make sense, what I've just said there? He's a smart bloke, I think is what I'm saying.
Yeah, he's a bright lad.
Bright lad.
He and I never talk politics. There was one subject that he and I never go near. We're poles apart when it comes to that. He'll laugh when he hears that. But,
and probably send you a text outlining some of his views just for your breakfast enjoyment.
Indeed. We've had some interesting conversations over the year on all kinds of subjects. So, yes, he's one of these, he's a more rounded person than you normally find in the top level of professional golf, which is not really a criticism. I think if you want to be the really good or the best at something, you're never going to be a rounded person because you've put so much into one thing. I mean, there isn't somebody who's the best in the world for anything. It's never rounded. It just can't be.
You know enough major winners, Huggy, as do I, which isn't many to know that none of them are normal. There's something different.
Yes.
You've touched on something there that really struck me after listening. He's fiery, isn't he, Coltart? He's a fiery character, and he's not afraid to share his opinions, but you could also tell you talked in the interview about TV work and some of that frustration, and he very cleverly danced around it, but you get some of the fire of Andrew Coltart in this interview, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, well, he's Scottish. I mean, what do you expect? There's a sort of inbuilt resentment to most things in Scottish people, and I'm a perfect example of that. But there is. I mean, I've long said that. I mean, there is a difference between broadcasting and journalism, as you well know, and it's a fact of life it's a weird fact of television life is that they get these people on there who are experts in their fields, and then they say, well, you can't say this, and this.
Let them talk
it's the strangest business in that respect.
It's the strangest, Huggy, partly because we all know it. Golf has a very educated audience, and everybody watching knows what It's a kind of a silly game, but we do play it. You've brought me neatly to my final sort of question, and you're right. We in Australia have some elements of that same Scottish personality. We love to resent things as well. He will endear himself to many with how fondly he speaks about Australia. You mentioned at the start he won 2 tournaments down here, but much more than that, it sounds like, to his entire career and much of his success.
Yeah, I mean, 2 Australian PGA championships. I mean, that would be... Yeah, it would be the biggest event he won in his career, I'm sure. I mean, he beat some really good players. I mean, the era we're talking about, it was a proper field for the Aussie PGA. I mean, Sam Torrance and others, he still talks about beating Seve down the stretch to win the Aussie PGA is the biggest thing he ever did in golf. So Andrew followed in those footsteps. And yes, he was a really good player. At a time when European golf was strong, and he can be proud of the fact that, I mean, he was picked for the Ryder Cup, but nobody was really saying, "Oh, he doesn't deserve it." So yeah, he was a good man at a good time.
And if for nothing else, though, there is plenty other to listen to. Just to listen to him talk about that Ryder Cup and the match that he played against Tiger Woods is worth the price of admission alone, which is already too low, I must say, Huggy, at 0. So if you're not listening to this, that's on you. It's your own fault. It's a terrific interview. And once again, lovely to sit down and listen to 2 Scots talk about golf. There's something about that feels right, and it makes it all the more intimate, but it's a most enjoyable chat.
I was just happy we didn't lapse too much into football. He's a Queen of the South fan. There you go. He's the only Queen of the South fan I know. So
I'm going to assume that's a bad thing, and I'm going to reprimand him for it here. Andrew, get on to Hibs is our team, is it not, Huggy?
That's my team,
well,
yes.
Your team is my team, you know?
Vastly superior to Queen of the South, obviously.
Yeah, clearly, he's had no right of reply, but I'm sure we might get an email. It's going to be terrific. Thanks for joining us to intro it, Huggy. It's a great chat.
My pleasure. Okay, welcome to the latest edition of the Thing About Golf podcast. My guest this time around is a man who's won 2 of the most important championships in golf. So here we are, the 1987 Scottish Boys champion and the 1989 winner of the Leven Gold Medal, Andrew Coltart. What was and is the thing about golf for you?
Huggy, yeah, good question. Yeah, good to see you, mate. Well, it's interesting. I played a lot of sports when I was growing up through school and things like that. And obviously I had a bit of family history in the game. My great uncle was one of the founder members of my golf club. My grandfather was a scratch. Shandy Gabber, my father, was one. But I was never sort of forced to play golf. I was encouraged to play all kinds of sports, and I did at school. And I got obviously quite good at playing golf. But I remember one particularly weekend playing football for the local team in the village, and busting my guts, running about all over the place. I was left back, defender, because I was useless at scoring goals, but I was all right at taking people out, and a bit like some of the players in your Hibs team. And I just remembered my weekend being somewhat ruined because a couple of guys on the team were not playing 100%, and I thought I'm not having my weekends or my personal happiness ruined by folk that are not going to pull their own weight. So it was pretty much round about that time that I decided that I wanted control over all of that myself, and that I would really sort of pursue the golf, and that way I was accountable for things when they didn't go well, and I was the one that was accountable for things when they did. So that really sort of kicked me off down that sort of golfing path. And one of the great things that is and always has been that I've had the opportunity to sort of travel the world and do something that for quite a fair period of it I absolutely loved doing, meeting a lot of great people and seeing a lot of different cultures.
Yeah, I mean, we start with your amateur career, from kicking off from what you just said. You pretty much ticked every box. You played the boys team, the youth team, the Scottish team, the Walker Cup. You went to college in America. You did all the things that were the in things to do back then. I mean, was it always the aim to be a pro? I mean, or when did it occur to you that you were good enough to do that?
Yeah, I think it probably occurred to me really when I won the Scottish Boys when I was 16 at Dunbar. So obviously that was an under 18 tournament. I was 16 and I won it, and then I got into the national side, and around about that time I thought, oh, that's interesting. Obviously, sort of reasonably sort of good at it. And I remember sitting in the exam hall at Wallace Hall Academy in Thornhill, tiny wee town in the southwest of Scotland, only about 2,000 population. And I remember sitting there, struggling to deal with whatever bloody question they were throwing at me. Quite a few of them I struggled to deal with. I remember looking at the wall, going, "What I would give just to be a European tour player for 1 year and have that, that tour badge sort of up on the wall. That would just mean the world to me." And I was sort of lucky, and I managed to have that for 18 years.
We touched on a couple of highlights of your amateur career, but I'll leave it to you to be a bit more serious about what were the biggest achievements of your time before you turned pro.
Yeah, well, obviously the Scottish Boys was the one that really sort of kick-started it. That was great.
Anybody can win that, though. I mean, really,
Yeah, well, clearly.
Some people end up writing. Some people end up writing for Golf Digest after they've won that. So there's no guarantees.
Well, some people develop a little bit quicker than others and then go downhill at a similar rate.
Indeed.
No, that was. I mean, that was obviously a highlight. And then we played in the 6-man European side. I think I can't remember. I think it was a year or two after that. Funnily enough, Thomas Bjorn played for the Danes, and we won that as well. So that was quite an achievement as well for Scotland. But that was more of a team event rather than an individual event. And then won the Scottish Stroke Play at Royal Troon in 2021 after I'd gone to college in America, and obviously got that opportunity. Well, I played at the time. The Eisenhower Trophy was a 4-man team from Scotland, England, Wales, and the island of Ireland. So to play in a 4-man team representing all of those was quite a massive achievement, even though we were absolutely rubbish. A terrible time down in Christchurch in New Zealand, but it was still a great honour and a privilege to be part of that team. And then obviously the Walker Cup, and that was sort of getting into the big time.
I wanted to ask you about the Walker Cup before we get into in America, your time in America. You had a slightly apocryphal tale about Phil Mickelson throwing clubs across tees when you were playing. I mean, run us through that little story.
Well, obviously Mickelson was Woods before Woods ever came on the scene. Mickelson was the blue-eyed sort of American boy. Funnily enough, I think I'd been at college. God, I'm trying the chronological order, but I remember him winning a professional event as an amateur. So that was that was obviously
same
huge.
Year as that Walker Cup. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that's right. So I remember that, and I get the feeling I was at college or something around about then, but maybe it can't be right. But anyway, I remember him winning that. He was over in Arizona, Scottsdale, or something like that. So he comes across, and it's just sort of everything's about him. And yeah, basically, first day I don't play the morning foursomes, so I've got all morning to sit and think about who I'm going to be playing against in the afternoon, which I can assure is not a great situation to be in, particularly if you're up against their number one player in the first match out. Yeah. So I was up against Mickelson, first match out at Portmarnock, first hole down by the water, on the right-hand side. He's a lefty, so our bags are at opposite sides of the tee. And of course, he hits his drive, and rather than just doing what every other normal person would do, sort of walk back to the caddy and hand the driver back to the caddy, he sort of throws it across the tee, sort of like, "God, I'm so good, aren't I? I absolutely love myself, don't I? Just catch that, Bones." And Phil was obviously quite immature around about those days because he came out with the infamous line when he hit a wild tee shot, which we've come to certainly know and expect from Phil Nicholson, one of the Irish locals. Sort of said, "Geez, Phil, what are you doing over here?" And he came out with inexplicable words of, I don't know why I've written over here. The Irish girls are not that attractive, which was just a ridiculously stupid line to say. And completely factually incorrect as well. And you just go, that's interesting. That's not something that a normal person would sort of say. And you wonder as well, because this guy, you'd have to think, would have received some kind of sort of media training to have gotten to where he's gotten at this age and stage of his career.
It wasn't the last time he put his foot in it, let's be honest. No,
absolutely. But this was at a stage where we were all learning, and we were all trying to find out what he was like. And so look, cut a long story short, he beat me 4-3, and I remember being asked by all you guys off the edge of the 15th green, whatever it was, what's Phil like? And I ended up getting quote of the month in one of the golf magazines because it was a fairly unedited version of my real thoughts on what I thought of the individual, which probably still fairly true.
Yeah. Well, I'll leave that to you, but So let's turn away from that. I'm quite amused that that story isn't apocryphal at all. It's entirely true. Your time in the States, why did you go? I mean, it was kind of the thing to do back then at that point, probably. And how was it? And when did you decide to turn pro? When did you think you were good enough? That was really what I'm trying to get to.
So I think, like I said, at 16, it was like, I can maybe do this professionally when I won the Scottish. Then at the Scottish Boys. Then when I won, the Scottish senior stroke play. By that stage, also again, look, it wasn't a sort of a date where I went, right, this is what I'm definitely going to do. But it just was sort of like, this is a really good option for me that I've got. And like I said, I'd played boys, youth, and men in the same year, so that's quite an accolade. I played Eisner Trophy. There's only 4 men from all the different countries that came together for that, so that gives you an indication as to where you're standing in the game. I was winning men's competitions. Like you talked about the Leaving gold medal, things like that, challenging for the Lytham Trophy, all the big competitions. I was always sort of in the mix and one of the top players in the country. So it was round about sort of 1989, 1990. That was my focus, and that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Which leads me into the next question. I mean, it wasn't, I think I'm right in saying success wasn't immediate, shall we say. It was a bit of a struggle at first. I mean, I've got memories of you disappearing off to Sweden to play on tour events there because you were struggling a bit to break through. I mean, what was that? Was that like a bit of a shock to the system?
Well, so
was there any doubts of, I'm not good enough at this point?
Oh, yeah. So I remember... So first of all, I tried to qualify for the tour school, and I bloody well got chickenpox in the qualifying for the tour school. Felt like an absolute cat, absolutely all over the place, and I mean all over the place.
Yeah, lovely.
It's like, geez, that's not very good. Didn't feel, funny enough, didn't qualify. So then I went to attempt to go through the PGA system, which wasn't a very happy memory for me. I got basically zero support there whatsoever. I was discouraged from talking to the press about where I was going to be, and in fact, I'll never forget it. And I won't name the name, but the chap said to me one day, "So look, you and I both know you're not good enough to make it on the tour." I mean, arguably that was kind of the best thing that it could have said, because I'm a stubborn little bugger, and I thought, well, stuff you. This is just great because I'm going to absolutely show you. And it was round about that period I thought, well, this is a waste of time following this path, getting no support, getting no golf, getting no practice. And I don't mind doing all the the low jobs and stuff like that, like cleaning the golf balls, cleaning the pros' shoes, cleaning his gut. Didn't mind doing all that. That was no problem at all. But don't put the fire out. So anyway, so around about that time, I thought there was a good tour in Sweden at the time. I'd been in the quarterfinals of the British Amateur at Barassi by a Swede who I played against numerous times. We became mates. He says, "Look, if you want to come and play the Swedish tour, you come up. We can, we travel on that together." And the Swedish tour was a great tour, and at that time had access into the Challenge Tour. So if you played reasonably well on the Swedish tour, you could get access onto the Challenge Tour. So I did that, got access onto the Challenge Tour. But by that time, getting the competitive practice gave me that opportunity to sharpen the game up. And by the time I went down to tour school at the end of that year, I think I finished in the top 10 or whatever it was at tour school and got a card. But then got out on tour and then was just overawed by the experience. The free equipment, the golf balls on the range, standing on the same strip of practice ground with your idols and stuff like that. And I get completely blown away, and I won £9,363.17 in that first year, which funnily enough didn't turn out a profit.
Yeah, I can imagine. So how did that all turn around then? Because obviously it did at one point.
Yeah. Well, I think that kind of goes back to, there were times, again, not making any cuts, spending money that I remember my dad trying to have a very difficult conversation with me about the future. Were you good enough? Could you do it? And had to do quite a bit of soul searching, quite a bit of mental gymnastics and internal digging, and let's just say managed to sort of work something out. Managed to get some backing that I could afford to go back to the tour school the next year. I went back to the tour school the next year, and finally sort of took off. I can't remember what card I got, but then started to earn money on tour quite successfully.
Yeah, I mean, how important was winning the Aussie PGA in 1994? Because that would be round about the time where you were maybe at a turning point, and maybe that was part of the reason that you decided, well, obviously I'm good enough. And then talk about how important Australia was in your development. This is a Golf Australia magazine production, so your experiences down there are of great interest, I'm sure.
Yeah, so that summer back home, I'd won the Scottish PGA Championship, and again, that was quite a nice one for me, because it was sort of like, it was a PGA. Somebody from the PGA told me I wasn't good enough, and then there I was winning the championship, having not been allowed to get into it the first time round when I actually had a tour card. It was sort of like, oh no, we don't want your kind here. Right, okay,
I remember that.
Thanks. Yeah. And then I did get in, and then I won it, and all of a sudden when I won it was like, oh, please come back and play, please. Oh, how it's interesting how things have changed. Is that for your benefit, or is that for my? Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So that was quite interesting. So anyway, so how do we decide to go down? I think again we decided to go down to Australia because the golf courses are legendary down there. The weather is tremendous down there. There's no point being back home. It's a great opportunity to grow and learn as a golfer. And I went down there with 2 or 3 guys from the Chubby Chandler stable ISM, and we went down and we played. And I went down to La Perouse, New South Wales, and it was all. I mean, it was all sort of a bit of a blur. I'd had a good year on the European tour, and there was sort of people from down there wanting to know you. Going out for dinners with my sponsors and from that part of the world down there, and it was sort of like a little bit of a sort of haze. Didn't really know what was going on and how the whole system worked, but nonetheless, loving my golf, loving the experience, loved the course, and went out there and won the Aussie PGA Championship, and unfortunately from my point of view, I didn't actually realise how big that was then, because I was focusing on everything the northern hemisphere in my own tiny little world at that stage. And then when I got the name on in the Kirkwood Cup and saw all the incredible names that had gone on that, it started to sink in a bit. And I just loved it. It was sort of home from home, wasn't it? I always sort of seemed to get on well with the people from the southern hemisphere.
The Australian golf, I mean, you took to it. I mean, you won the Aussie PGA again in 97. You lost a playoff to Woosie, I think it was, in 96 at the Johnny Walker Classic in Australia. What was it about Australian golf and courses that was particularly suited to your game?
Yeah, that was actually at Tanamera in Singapore. That
sorry,
playoff for that playoff for the Johnny Walker.
Right.
Oh, the interesting thing was, it was because conditions were tended to be pretty good. You know, a lot of courses round about the coast, a lot of wind. I was a low ball hitter at that stage. I was a very good putter. Actually, some of the best times of my life on the greens down there. Like I said, loved the weather, loved the sun, loved the golf courses. I've been welcomed by an awful lot of the players over there. Clayton, Jimmy, your mate, our mate, Roger Davis, was great, taking me under his wing, and even Dodge. Dodge was a great character, and he was hard nosed. But once you got behind that tough exterior, he was a real good lad, and he was great fun to be around. Craig Parry, a lot of the guys didn't know Elkington so much. He was more sort of playing in the States, but just got in with a real good bunch of guys. I get, like I said, just love the courses. The greens were absolutely superb. The bunkering was great. The designs were tremendous, and it was just the best busman's holiday in the world. Playing golf around great courses and earning money doing it, and having a great time. It was tremendous.
The strengths of your game obviously fitted all that. What did you do particularly well that fitted that kind of golf?
Well, like I said, I putted well, and I didn't get the ball up in the air, so I was really good at dealing with the wind. Downwind, my ball wouldn't go that far, but into the wind, my ball flight would penetrate quite well. The bit low spin, knuckle ball, bounding down the fairway, and getting some pretty good distance. I also was pretty smart in terms of I knew what my strengths were. I understood my game. I understood what a golf course architect was asking with the questions that they presented in front of you, and I knew how they wanted to get played, and I knew how to take shots on that were, within my scope and ability, and I knew when to play safe. And don't underestimate, of course, the power of everything being new, loving it, enjoying the travel at that time and stage, these new experiences, new foods, new friendships, all that kind of stuff. It was just some of the best times of my life.
Mm-hmm. Is it fair to say that sort of early to mid 90s onwards is a fairly steady progression towards the Ryder Cup in 99?
Yeah.
I mean, I see you were part of the Dunhill Cup winning team for Scotland in 95 as well.
Yeah.
It was all was it a steady kind of thing, or did you take big jumps at a time? I mean, how did it go? There's different ways of doing it, obviously.
Yeah, no, I think it was fairly steady. It was, I think when I finally got my tour card, I think I finished like 43rd, and then for about 4 years, I gradually got better and better. I think I twice finished inside the top 10 in the order of merit, and in those days, that got you into the US Opens and certainly 3 of the majors. I missed out on Masters, I remember, by 1 spot in the order of merit on at least one occasion, I think I finished runner-up in the Volvo Masters, which was a big event at the end of the season as well. I played, actually that was in 2000. I went back down to Australia again, and I think got beaten in the quarterfinals of the World Match Play down there at Metro. I think it was Metropolitan. I think it was that played down there. I remember beat David Toms there in that. So again, happy memories. But yeah, it was a pretty fairly smooth progression. That was there. Of course, Qatar Masters had won in 98. That was at the same time that I'd managed to win the Australian Order of Merit, which was huge. Again, carried an awful lot of weight. We'd gone back down to Australia. By this time, I went back down with my wife, and we travelled down there again. Peter Senior, great mate. A lot of great golf, and I think I top 10 in something like 7 out of the top 10 10 events that I'd played. Won the Order of Merit and won in Qatar. Got my first win in the European Tour, and that set me up nicely to have a chance to play for the Ryder Cup side in '99.
Yeah, you also won at Slaley Hall, which has to be one of the worst golf courses I've ever seen on a European Tour event. But you were capable of winning on bad courses as well as good ones, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting point.
There goes my free weekend at Slaley Hall. That's for sure.
Yeah. Look. I think it's all about the land that you've got, and they did a very good job, as Gary Player would sort of say, building a golf course with the land that they had. But yeah, we were just grateful at a time that we obviously had a tournament up in the northeast of England. It's a beautiful part of the world. It really is a great part of the world. Great people up there, and there are some shots that you'd have to play, and there's some strategies that you'd have to employ around that golf course that you probably wouldn't have to do around some other golf courses. But nonetheless, it made for some fairly sort of compelling viewing and some nervy moments. But the interesting thing about Slaley Hall was I wasn't really playing well. This sounds bad. I wasn't playing well, but I led from round one. And something was just not right. I could feel it, and I was really sort of struggling, but my putting was holding things together. And so having led from the start, I remember trying to explain to my wife on the morning of the final round that I'm just in bits here. I'm really, really struggling. I've got this to lose, and the pressure's just enormous. And I don't feel good at all. Couldn't eat breakfast. Just felt horrible. She couldn't understand that. She wasn't a golfer. It doesn't seem to make sense. This is everything you've dreamed about. You practice to get any moments like this, and here you are. You're absolutely bricking it. Why is that? Yeah. And it was horrible.
You always know, though. You always know, don't you?
Oh, well, the golf. I had no idea. I mean, how can I be in this position and not know where the club face was? But I was. I was in that position. I had no idea where the club face was. I was going through some swing changes. I was losing my swing, taking on somebody else's ideas about a golf swing. I had no proprioception, no feel of where that club head is. The golf ball is flying off in angles that are just new to me. And I somehow, don't know how, managed to put the lights out. And through 9 holes, the lead has evaporated comfortably. Yeah. And somehow I managed to hold a couple of putts and managed to start hitting a couple of decent shots on the back 9 and pull things back together again, end up with the lead going down the last hole and managed to par the last hole and get my second win. But it was horrible. But the weird thing was, if you can win when you're playing badly, that should really sort of spur you on. But it was an awful, believe it or not, it was an awful lot of scar tissue and mental anguish in there. And I never really sort of kicked on from that moment, never really sort of recovered from losing my golf feels, my golf swing, and basically sort of struggled from there for about 10 years.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to that later on, but we must talk about the Ryder Cup in 1999. You were obviously a part of that team. I have to say, I was mildly surprised that you were picked. I was expecting Bernhard Langer to get that spot, but fair dues went to you. Then it turned out, of course, that you were one of the guys who sat there watching for the first 2 days. Mark James went with the same kind of group for the foursomes and the four balls, so you didn't play until the singles. And then, kind of like the Walker Cup in '91, you get the best player on the American team. Talk me through the how it was. It must have been tough for the first 2 days mentally. Obviously you're there supporting the guys, but not getting to play must have been difficult. And then talk me through, the epic match with Tiger. By the way, I have to say that you and I have won the same number of holes in the Ryder Cup.
Excellent. Yeah, very good.
Yeah. It was no, which is not to say that was a great. Your performance at Tiger was good,
Yes, but I've got 100% record. You don't.
Very good.
Interesting. Yeah. So you got in the team, and that was very, very emotional. And the great debate and conjecture about who should and who shouldn't have. But anyway, I managed to get in. And obviously, now things change from your sort of normal golfing mentality, where you're just doing it for yourself. Now you're part of a team, and it's an incredible honour and privilege to be part of that and be part of 12 European players plus, the people in the wings that play a huge part as well, and of course the captain, the vice captains. and to do battle in the ultimate stage against the Americans. It was huge, a massive learning experience. Not enough time to sort of take it all in, despite the fact that by the time the matches started to get underway, everybody was still sort of chomping at the bit. But at that stage, there was so many functions to go to, afternoon, evenings, and things like that. Fortunately, they've reduced the amount of those so that players can really sort of concentrate on the game. But yeah, so left out the first day, fine. That's or first morning. That's no problem. Left out that afternoon. Okay, well that's that's not great, but fair enough. Europe are going along nicely. So of course I think the brains are going, well, here, hang on, we're doing well, and this is where I always argue that it's the collective you're playing for, not the individual. Do you know what I mean? There's the tough thing for the captains and vice captains is when you get a bunch of people with big egos, it's very difficult to manage that. For some people, they don't want to play for the collective; they want to play for themselves. Yeah. And at that stage, rather surprisingly to me, from people that had played more Ryder Cups than I had, they were hell bent on making sure that they played 5 matches, so it looked good in their CV, rather than actually doing what was better for the collective. So what they were doing was knackering themselves out, rather than giving somebody a game, which seemed ridiculous to me, because when you factor in there's 12 points to play for on the final day, that's more important than sitting out for a session and maybe giving somebody else a go. I don't subscribe to this everybody's got to get a game before the singles. I do not subscribe to that. You do what you have to do in order to win the Ryder Cup. And if somebody ends up with a bloody nose because they're maybe not playing well, they don't fit in, that's just tough, right? Can you see any of the top Premiership football managers or whatever, or down there, in rugby union, rugby league, making sure a guy gets a game because his nose is put out of joint? No, they just tell him, you're sitting on the sidelines, mate. This isn't your time. So, I had to suck that up. The second day. Again, there was 3 of us in the same situation, though. That was maybe the slightly strange thing. Myself, Van de Velde, and Jarmo Sandelin never got a game. And to me, that's possibly where we lost it. Not because one of us could have claimed a point necessarily, but because the top players who we would be hoping to perform well on the Sunday were exhausted by the Sunday. Subsequently, they all lost their matches. That was where we lost it, in my opinion. Yeah. Not whether somebody got a game or not. And that was kind of the unfortunate. So 3 of us were sitting out while 8 and 9 guys got a chance to sort of play all 4 sessions. And but having said that, we had 7 rookies in the team, Huggy. 7 rookies. I mean, that's unheard of. And Mark James, who was the captain, alongside Sam Torrance and Ken Brown, tremendous amount of experience, took a 4-point lead with 7 rookies to the Americans on American soil. That was unheard of. Absolutely unheard of. So the argument there would be, well, hang on a second. Is there any point throwing somebody in just to bleed them if we're going to end up with a 4 lead, or maybe not have a 4-point lead at that stage? And it was difficult. I was thinking, well, there's pressure on you to come in to upset a partnership, a successful partnership. Half a point is crucial in these matches, and it could very well have been the case of sort of giving away a point. But
I think
it's certainly a tremendous amount of conjecture.
Yeah, Mark James has done a pretty good job of, defending or explaining his decision making, and you can certainly understand where he was coming from. But the downside of it was that the 3 of you were going to go into the singles not having played. That's a very, very difficult position to be put in.
Well, yeah, but the interesting when I finally got the green light, I was no more nervous than I would have been had I been put in at any other stage. I was raring to go. I was desperate to go. Yeah. So I would have been much more nervous if I'd been thrown in earlier on at the beginning of earlier on in the matches, and potentially maybe not as felt as comfortable and therefore maybe not have played as well. Now, I can't speak for Sandelin and I can't speak for Van de Velde, but by the time I was given a green light, I was desperate to get out there, and I felt pretty good. So
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, I know I was winding you up earlier about how you didn't win a hole, but I mean, you were playing against the guy who was by a mile the best player in the world, and you took him all the way to the 16th green, and there was a controversial moment in there as well. I mean, you clearly played very well. I mean, 3-2 against Tiger. No, not terrible, not awful, but
in a Ryder Cup, you talk about that kind of cauldron. In a Ryder Cup round a US Open style golf course, which again I hadn't a tremendous amount of experience round. The baying mob of the bear pit as it went
awful.
on to be called, and I think I was round about level par. Which when you factor in the pressure of playing Tiger, the pressure of your first Ryder Cup, your pressure around a golf course of that degree. Bear in mind, US Open venues, even though it was a Ryder Cup, US Open venues.
Yeah,
I mean, over par, or nobody would win a US Open under par in those days. So that's how difficult the bloody golf course is. Well, so that was yes, I did. I played pretty damn good, all things considered, and we were level. We were level in the matches through 6 holes. I 3-putted 7. I'm 20 feet away from the hole in 2 at the par 4 8th, and he's in the hay on the right hand side. He chips in out the hay for a birdie 3. I miss the 20-footer. He goes 2 up. I pull my drive down the 10th at that stage at Brookline, which is over a little hill. You can't see the landing area.
This is what I want to hear about, yeah.
And so you can't see the landing area. I mean, I've not hit a good tee shot, and he's smashed one miles down the middle, so he's easily going to be reaching his par 5 and 2. But I've smashed one over the left-hand side. Now, the crowd can't get down the left-hand side. They can only get down to a rocky outcrop down the right-hand side. That's about a third of the way down the hole. So no spectators were sort of moving down there because the next hole basically comes back. So they're waiting for you coming back up there. So I hit my tee shot over this hill down the left hand side, and it's not in the fairway. Now, I know I've pulled it, and the marshals on the right hand side on this rocky outcrop are signalling that my ball's up in the trees on the left hand side. And I know it's not, because I know I've not hit it that far. I'm not hit it that well, and I've not hit it that far, so it can't be up there. But nonetheless, nobody would ever imagine that somebody would be misdirecting you at this stage in society, or as good or as gentlemanly as the game has always been. Nobody would ever think to be sort of cheating you out of trying to find your golf ball.
Yeah. So does Tiger really need any help?
Well, again, that's right. Tiger, they were obviously worried. I had Tiger just where I wanted him in my back. Two down with 9 holes left to play was exactly where I wanted Tiger.
Yeah.
So exactly. So again, cut a long story short, we're looking for this ball in a place where I know it's not, but what are we supposed to do? There's about 20 of us down there. Anyway, time's up. I go back to the tee, and of course, as I've declared it now lost, or the time's gone up, somebody just happens to be standing on my ball in the about 2 feet off the fairway in the rough down the left hand side, one of the cameramen or something like that, and we were looking. We were 30 yards away from where the ball actually was.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to your caddy that day, Ricky. He was apoplectic, and still is, I think. Yeah, if you bring it up. Yeah. I mean, it leaves a bad taste. I mean, in the bigger picture, though, I mean, how aware would you? I mean, I was there all week, and it was still the most, and I use this word advisedly, the most disgusting thing I've ever seen on golf courses was the behaviour of the crowd that week. How aware were you of that?
Well, we knew it was going on because of, I mean, my wife, we'd had a baby the week before. So my wife was back home. She couldn't travel, unfortunately. So, but we were aware because of the other wives and partners and family members that were walking down the sides. When you're inside the ropes, you train on a daily basis to focus and concentrate on what's in front of you. And it's just white noise round the side. And B, you're separate from all the noise that's going away. So you're in a way sort of protected, at least you certainly should be. But of course, the people that are not trained and the people that haven't grown up learning how to deal with all these kind of things were mingling with those kind of rowdy spectators lining the fairways. And that was very, very difficult for your friends, your family, your partners, your girlfriends. Tough for them to take. And it's something that I do caution the team and the captain and the vice captains this year, that is very, very difficult, because your partners who potentially, can get broken by that type of behaviour, are going to be sharing a bed with you that evening. They're going to be talking about how distressed they've been, and that potentially can impact your ability to go out there and do your job. It's something that they have to consider, because it's a deliberate ploy by everybody. It's to try and rile up as many people as possible, to make it as uncomfortable for you as possible. And it's absolutely possible that will happen, and they need to be aware of that.
Yeah. How worried are you about this year? I mean, I've been to umpteen Ryder Cups in America. The worst one that I've been to was Brookline, but the one at Minnesota, where America won, was just about as bad. I mean, it's only a game of golf. I've never really understood this, but it's the Ryder Cup is kind of gone beyond, across the line in many ways, and it's disappointing. And it's especially true in America, and especially true of the New York area. I mean, I'm seriously concerned about what might happen this year.
Well, I think, look, I mean, the Ryder Cup transcends sport. It's not just golf fans; it's sports fans. So what comes with that comes with the tribalism that is prevalent in some of the other sports. I actually love it because I love
to an extent,
I love that.
Yes.
I love that toe to toe, get in your face. Oh, let's have a go here. This is just tremendous. I love that. But you have to be prepared for it. Now, that's what Luke Donald and his team have tried to do to the best of their ability at the Team Cup. Some of the things they did, they had never been done before. And I think it's great, because these guys the guys who will play in that team who have never, ever played in a Ryder Cup will not know what to expect. And it will be like nothing they have ever imagined before. If they can prepare in any way, it'll be great. But I love that it is going to be incredible. It is going to be sensational. The blood is going to be boiling. People are going to be, just spitting with sort of rage and tribalism and passion, trying to get their team over the finish line, particularly, as to how well the European team did last time. And of course, we know the rowdy crowds up in that part of the world. The difficulty will be, and it wouldn't surprise me, the difficulty will be if some people have had a little bit too much to drink and things spill out, because these kind of things happen outside of football grounds. And if not policed and not thought about, I wouldn't be surprised if sometimes there'll be skirmishes in the crowds. Things in the world are just putting everybody on a heightened level of emotion these days, and sporting events are where these kind of things will possibly spill out.
Yeah. Last word on the Ryder Cup. How disappointing was it to you that you only had one go at it? You never really. Really
disappointing. Yeah, my plan was, right, I've been picked to play a Ryder Cup. I want to prove that wasn't a flash in the pan. That wasn't fake. That I wanted to justify that by qualifying. I embarked on a process, putting a tremendous amount of work and effort into trying to become a better player, and ended up subsequently becoming a worse player. And that was deeply disappointing, and still bothers me somewhat today. But I headed off down that path for the very best reasons, and it didn't work out. And I was really, really, really disappointed.
I'm going to touch on that again in a minute, but I do want to bring up the major championships of 2003. Where Mike Weir won the Masters that year. He was born on May the 12th, 1970.
Yeah.
Jim Furyk then 2 months later won the next major, the US Open. He was born on May the 12th, 1970, at which point I was all set to rush out and put money on you to win the Open. Born May the 12th, 1970. And then you didn't even qualify. What a letdown.
Yeah, I was going through a bad spell at that particular time. Yes. No, I was well aware of that. Yeah. Yeah, I was in a pretty dark place after that sort of win in 2001. Things, again, like I said, I was putting time and effort in and getting worse and worse, and that I didn't understand that. I would have been better off not working at it, but I was working at it. and just getting more and more and more and more confused. And I see people doing that. I worry about the likes of Victor Hovland, heading off sort of down that path. I worry about some of these top players. They've got so good, but this it's lovely. This pursuit of getting better. Oh how tremendous of you. Oh how courageous of you. Hang on a second. You're bloody good. Allow that to flourish and continue for just 10 years. There is no such thing as perfection. Just exploit to the best of your ability the skills and the talents that you've got, rather than trying to find something that may never be there and could seriously actually do you a hell of a lot more harm.
I remember you and I talked when you decided to finish. I did a column in the newspaper I was doing at the time, and part of that story was just what you've just articulated, but also part of it was that the game had kind of passed you by a little bit in terms of the distance that was required to play at the elite level. The distance explosion had come along in the wake of the Pro V1 at the start of the century, and that wasn't your game. And it seemed to me that part of your decision was that you simply couldn't hit it far enough to compete. Is that still the case?
Absolutely, mate. I mean, absolutely. And do you
lament that? I mean, the likes of Luke Donald and Luke Donald type player is never going to be number one in the world again. The way things are going, I mean, that's basically impossible.
Well, it's very difficult. You look at some guy like Tom Kim and stuff like that. I mean, as talented as he is, mind you, he's still hitting it a lot further than I ever did. But he's down that list of distance, and it's very, very challenging. That was tough to take, because it was evident the way the golf courses were being set up that they didn't appreciate that somebody who was short could still be a skillful and clever and good professional golfer. So, I was getting sick of missing the fairway on a par 4 by about 2 yards, being in the rough and having to hack out with a wedge, no chance of a 4-iron going in the green, and somebody could hit it 50 yards offline, 40 yards further forward to me, and have a wedge in their hand to the green. So accuracy off the tee disappeared from the game completely. I remember pitching up in Portugal one year. I put 6th hole with something like a par 5, and it was 250 yards to the bloody fairway. And I couldn't carry it 250 yards, and I was like trying to run it down. But I said to the director, I said, what's going on here? I said, I can't even reach the fairway here, and didn't care. So you were competing. You were trying to hit 4-irons into greens, which, by the way, is a lot harder to hit than a wedge into greens, with people that were hitting wedges into the greens and were damn good with the wedges. And it was sport, it was evolution. But the problem had been was the game, and with the equipment that we started playing with, if you hit it offline with those elements in your golf bag, they never helped you. Your ball went offline. The one that went 40 yards offline went 80 yards offline. So the equipment started to help these wide hitters bring the golf ball more in play. The golf ball, the aerodynamics of the golf ball adjusted in flight, the dodecahedron and the max flight, they kicked that off. Then all the other golf balls adapted. The equipment with the torque and the club face and the gear effect, that all helped them. And basically the technology helped average golfers become very, very good golfers, and people that could dunt it down the middle and hit it pretty straight, they became obsolete, and I was one of them.
Yeah, it's certainly true that at the level you're talking about, the level you played at, was that driving went from being the hardest thing to do well to basically the easiest. And the talent to hit a long iron disappeared. I mean, I always use Nicholas Colsaerts, our friend, who's a magnificent long iron player, maybe the best 3 or 4 in the world. His edge through that was completely lost because people just hit hybrids. Now, they don't need to hit a long iron. Yeah. So the game, my lament is that the game is supposedly a multi-dimensional game, asking whole lots of questions across the board, has become a lot more one-dimensional at the elite level. Yeah.
Massively. So much highs. I mean, I remember it really sort of started to hit home when Vijay Singh was winning everything and FedEx Cups and Order of Merits at the time over there in America, and he wasn't in the top 150 in driving accuracy. And you go, whoa, hang on a second. You know, the first bit of playing a hole is off the tee. You have to get that ball in play. That's a skill. You have to get that ball in play. And yet, here he was outside the top 150, earning absolutely millions. That was when the game had changed. It was all about getting it down there as far as you could, having as much loft in your hand, because remember, the greens were soft. Do you know what I mean? And they could just float everything up through the air and onto the green and, knock it in for birdie, whereas I couldn't get a 4-iron out the rough.
Yeah. Are you a big enough fuddy-duddy like me to think that the game at the elite level is less interesting to watch and probably less interesting to play?
Good question. I mean, I still find the game very interesting. I think...
as do I, but it's not as interesting as it used to be. I always use the line, nobody's playing like Seve or Lee Trevino, so how can it be better?
Well, yeah, yes. I don't think the golfers are as skillful as they were. Put it that way. I think they're paid an awful lot of money, and have less talent than a lot of.
Well, I think they are. I think they are as talented, but they just don't need to show it. They're not asked the questions, so they don't answer them.
We don't know because they're not asked those questions. I mean, I think Mike Clayton continues to be. He dug this out of a book. I think it was Arnold Palmer and Dean Beeman, and I can't remember which golf course it was they were playing against, but it gives you the clubbings that they're hitting. And
it was the US Open at Champions in 1969.
Yeah, and Dean Beeman, who went on to be commissioner of the tour and set up Sawgrass, he was hitting like 4 woods into par 4s. Now Palmer, who was a beast of a man, was still hitting 4-irons and things like that into par 4s. Well, now a 4-iron to a hard green that's hardly watered, because in those days they didn't have a lot of sprinkler systems on it, and still shooting a score. That's talent. That's incredible talent. And the conditions that they've got to play with the golf ball spuds that they were playing with as well, that would go out of shape with just one missed strike. That was talent. Nowadays the guys are hitting wedges. That's not talent.
No. That's
not talent to hit a wedge from 150 yards. It's talent to hit a green from 180 yards with a 4-iron. That's talent, and that's why I say that at the minute I don't play. Now there are 1 or 2 players that are hugely talented. We know that, but there's others that don't require those talents because they can be incredibly successful with the one-dimensional game that they've got. But that said, and the way it's sold and the way the game is. The way the game is at the minute is still pretty interesting.
Which makes segues nicely into your career now, which is commentating. Let's quick question on how you got into it and what your philosophy is. And everybody's got a philosophy on commentary. I mean, people ask me about it as a journalist, and I think, well, journalism and broadcasting are two different things. They're not the same. I don't think, generally speaking, guys that do what you do are allowed to say as much as you maybe would like to say at times. But you can confirm or deny that. But I mean, start with how you got into it and what you think you bring to the table, as it were.
Yeah, I got into it I purely by chance. My agent at the time, David Brooks, worked for ISM. He got me a gig on Sky and as a guest in the Sky studios when I wasn't playing. And he was thinking well ahead of the curve. I wasn't even thinking about it because I was going to play golf till I was 60 years old and never have to worry about it. Fortunately, he had a bit better brain in his head than I had, and give me an opportunity to sit in front of camera and get a little bit used to that. So I did that. I quite enjoyed it. I thought it was quite good, and had several sort of cracks at it while other people were not getting that opportunity. And cut a long story short, my career was coming to a pretty abrupt end, and I got a phone call one winter's day from Mark Rowe, who was working with Sky, saying, you thought about, getting into the TV. Are you going to continue to play golf? And I remember, what it's like in Scotland in the middle of winter. The horrible leaves off the trees are blowing horizontally, the rain's coming in, hitting the side of the car. I was parked up in a garden, a petrol forecourt, thinking, oh my God, how am I going to practice golf in this, the horrible turf and the wind and the weather? So the opportunity was presented to me, and it was great, actually, because I went home, spoke to my wife, Emma, and she said immediately, just take it, because she could see the harm, unfortunately, that my dying dream was sort of doing to me, and I wasn't able to sort of compete with these players anymore, and how that was affecting me mentally, physically, and stuff like that. And she said, no, just take it, because if you don't, somebody else will take it. So I took the opportunity, working with Sky, and again did some more shifts as a sort of pundit in the studio, and then sort of branched into on-course commentating, and then colour commentating, and then lead commentary. And thoroughly enjoy it, and very grateful for the opportunity. But yeah, it has changed. It has changed massively. The world has changed, as we all know. There are things that you can't say. There are subjects you can't broach. There's areas you can't go. You have to filter out an awful lot of the thoughts that come into your head while being spontaneous at the same time. That's challenging. You have to be aware that some people's tolerance levels are much more reduced now to certain things that would come out your mouth than they used to be in the golden age when Peter Allis was going about his punditry, his commentary. So it's an interesting dynamic that you got still learning. It's an interesting dynamic you still got to get used to.
Yeah, see that I find that more than a little frustrating at times, because I know you well. I know Richard Boxall. I know a bunch of the guys on Sky. I know them well. I've known them for years, and I know how much they know about golf and about the game and how it's played and all the rest of it. And they're not allowed to say a lot of that stuff on air, and that is frustrating to me. I find it extraordinary, the comparison between what you do for Sky and what the football pundits do. They seem to be free to say whatever the hell they want about whoever they want, and it's not the same on the golf. And I find that a little frustrating, because I know a lot of the stuff that I'd like to hear isn't getting said. And it would be educational for the public listening.
I think we try to be. I think we try to be more objective, but it is interesting the direction things go in, and everything's commercialized, everything's money orientated. You've got to be careful who your paymasters are. You've got to look after them, and that's tough if you want to hear objective commentary and things like that. It's very difficult. I find it slightly amusing that there are people very, very successfully exploiting some of the other platforms and allowed to be themselves, because they don't have the restrictions that we have, obviously, either at Sky or any of the other sporting channels that we've got, and they can be themselves. They can use colourful language. People get an understanding as to that, and they're getting hundreds and hundreds of thousands of views, not because of that, but because it's a little bit, it's more of a realistic tone and conversation regarding the subject matter. When you're out there in front of regulated television, you obviously have to conform to what the regulators demand, and they're quite strict restrictions, and we're obligated to go along with them.
I get that. You're doing your job and you're doing it well. I just find it frustrating, because I know that it could be better, because of the knowledge that you guys have, and you don't get the chance to show it. It's just like we're talking about with the game itself. I think the players now they can't. Of course, they're as skillful as the players in the past, but they're playing a different game. They're not asked the same hard questions that they were back in the day.
That comes down to the money. What they do, because the only way they're going to start hitting 4 irons into small green par 4s is if the golf courses become 9,000 yards long. We can't do that.
Yeah,
but they've headed off down this path, obviously, because again, an argument is the commercial aspect of it, where club manufacturers are making an awful lot of money out of selling hardware, tremendous amount of research and development going in there to get the ball going further, straighter, all that kind of stuff. As a result of that, of course, the demand and the necessity for longer golf courses is becoming more and more to the fore. And yet, some of the best holes, the hardest holes that people play, are the shortest holes and the most entertaining.
Yeah. I mean, I'm writing a piece at the moment on the previewing the Women's Open at Porthcawl. And I'm part of that. I'm going to highlight that there's a little par 3 in the corner. I think it's 7th or 8th, 120 yards or something it is. And it's
just
a magnificent little hole.
Yeah.
It's such good fun, that hole. And it's a potential disaster hole as well. I mean, if you do miss it.
It's surrounded by goss either side, isn't it? Yeah,
and bunkers everywhere. Yeah,
I know, mate. I know. Look, I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, it's not going to change. If we keep talking about ball speeds, club head speeds, carry distances, it's not going to change. I mean, Rory yesterday at one drive, 373 yards. You know, I've not had a chance to see all the numbers, but a large proportion. In fact, I think he averaged 343 yards or something yesterday off the tee, and that is bringing eyes to the screen. That is bringing people to the golf course.
I get that.
And if that isn't going to change, then we're going to continue off down this path.
Yeah.
But it's still never going to get these players using the four irons.
No, I mean, I think it's in many ways it's a dumbed down version of the game at the elite level, you know, with the long drives and all the rest of it. But anyway, enough of that. Just I want to finish up by inevitably asking you about what your view is of the state of the wider, you know, certainly professional game at the moment, the live golf stuff that drags on and on and on. I mean, how do you view that from your seat in the commentary box?
It's really interesting because I'm obviously trying to view it from both my position as a commentator, but also as a golf lover, and things that happened recently in the game. Look, I think there's one or two characters, obviously, that are in live that we miss watching on a more regular basis. You cannot deny that. There are some, of course, that have gone away and they're not missed, but I don't blame them for the decisions that they made. I think
at the age they were at, especially.
Absolutely. Good grief, absolutely. You know, let's put the moral arguments aside. This is about, you know, themselves. It's about their legacy, their family, and stuff like that. And by the way, who are we to judge people on things like that? Because everybody is using things that are derived from oil and stuff like that in any case. So that argument is slightly lost on me. But and by the way, everybody's doing it in every country in any case. So that argument slightly lost on me. But so I miss one or two of those players. They are very, very entertaining. They're polarizing, but that's part of the entertainment value. They always create storylines, and they're great players. So I think that's great. But having said that, I think recently some of the things that have just happened, you know, with some of the players, you know, that have maintained their position on well, pretty much the PGA Tour, but either the DP World Tour as well. You know, you've got Scheffler again, who's back in the winner's circle after what must have felt like a torrid time, 3 months or whatever it was outside of the winner's circle. You know, winning by 8 shots. You've got Rory McIlroy, who's just finally, you know, after you know, what is it, 11 years or 11 something, years. Finally managing to win his green jacket and entering that, you know, legendary status now of 5 major championships, but a career Grand Slam, which is phenomenal. Funnily enough, you've got next week, you've got Jordan Spieth, his 9th attempt, I think, to get into that hallowed halls. So the game is still is very much alive despite the divisiveness, and there's so many talking points. There's also tremendous still young talent, you know, coming through the game. You know, batons being handed down to the likes of you know, Oberg, Hovland's still young enough. You know, a lot of these young players coming out of universities that are going to become very, very good players. Again, the game is evolving, and you know, we're going to look to some of these younger players to fill in the footsteps of some of the names that have gone on to live. And I don't really know how close we all are yet of pulling things together. But I know one thing, that the stories over the last month or so have just emphasised that there's still an awful lot to offer.
Do you pay much attention to live golf? I mean,
Yeah, I do.
You have to. I mean, I'm the same, but it's very limited. I mean, I'm not that interested. And I said to Lee Westwood not a while ago now, I said, look, the biggest problem you've got at live golf is that I'm not that interested. I just don't care enough to watch it every week. And if I'm typical, and I probably am, that's their biggest hurdle, I think, is that it's just not that interesting.
Well, I mean, I follow it to obviously to keep tabs on who's doing what. And so, for instance, Joakim Niemann, who's actually,
very good.
He's a top class player that we need to see more of as well. Make no mistake about that. He's Finn and Ram, of course. They're phenomenal. But I mean, I would almost go along with that and sort of say any event where there's no jeopardy halfway through. I don't understand this no cut scenario. Yeah. It does not make sense to me at all. There is great stories associated with players who are on the cut line. There's also, entertaining TV times with people that are on the cut line. They arguably, it's more important to them and their careers and their family.
I tell you what,
and
people
more
never see it.
Life. Yeah.
Friday, you know this better than I do. I mean, I've just watched it. You've been a part of it. I mean, Friday night at tournaments. Yeah. If you want to see real pressure, that's the time to see real pressure. Not the 6 foot putt to get in the playoff or win the tournament. Fine, you're still going to get a potload of money. But if you've got to hold a 6 footer to play the next day, that's important.
I agree. And invariably, these people that are doing that, they're doing that to for their career. Now, the guy I'm going to name next isn't. He's financially as well. But Max Homa last year, when he held the putt on the 18th green at Royal Troon, which he thought, I think, was to make the cut. I think he actually maybe missed by one at the end. But you see this wealthy individual, but how much it means to play another 2 rounds in the Open Championship round Royal Troon. Those putts, when they hold them to get another 2 days and an opportunity to earn some money, and what it means to these guys, arguably is more emotional, more impactful than the guys that go on to win maybe 3.6 million that week. But they're already multi-millionaires, and if they miss that putt, they're still going to pick up several million.
Do you think there has to be a way back? I guess, but I mean, do you think there is a way back for the live players into the mainstream?
Well, I don't know what it is. I suspect though you're going to see one or two of them, certainly from the European perspective, play one or two more times to get into the Ryder Cup. Now, how that is laid out, how that is manifested, I do not know. I wouldn't like to speculate at this particular moment.
Yeah, a lot of bad feeling on the other side,
again, I'm sure some people will be looking at it from the point of view of they want the best players all coming together for that match. They don't want the match to be lessened in any way by not having the top players available. So I would think maybe both tours, maybe in particular the DP World Tour, will be looking at a way to navigate things so that they can present the best team possible.
Europe needs their best team. I mean, America, just because of the depth, doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily, even given how often Europe win. But if Europe don't have their best team, they're probably not going to win. You know?
Yeah, so I think there'll be like a slight softening of some of the boundaries and the parameters as over the last 2 or 3 years now, however long it's been in operation, that the initial shock of what had happened in the golfing landscape, the earthquake, has sort of softened a bit and eased a bit, and the personal animosities that were very prevalent to begin with have disappeared, and there already is a sort of a global sort of coming together and smoothing of the waters, which is maybe sort of naturally what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's what everybody wants, and maybe that's a good place to wrap up. I'm conscious I've kept you for well over an hour already, and
right.
I know your time is very valuable. Are you off to the PGA next week?
Well, it depends who's listening. Yes, I'll be doing it remotely.
This won't run till afterwards. Don't worry. So.
I'll be doing it remotely from Isleworth, windowless room, looking at a screen. But it's amazing. It's amazing, as you know, it's amazing what technology is capable of doing these days, isn't it?
Yeah. Does that make a difference? Last question.
Yeah, look, I mean, well, it's easy for me because I'm home every night. I don't get jet lag. I got my own foods and stuff like that. But obviously that can be quite challenging because you're limited with knowing and understanding the playability of the conditions that the players are going to face.
Yeah.
During those weeks, and also how conditions and the atmosphere all sort of comes together, and it's difficult to try and paint that and allow the people to feel it themselves.
Yeah, Andy, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure as always. Always enjoy our chats, and thank you for being on The Thing About Golf.
No problem at all, mate. Good to see you, and thanks for asking us. Thanks for having us on.
Great chat there, and I think shows the value of a podcast like this, because much of what you just heard you'd be unlikely to hear on many other platforms, and all of it is important to the broader golf discussion. A huge thanks to Andrew and also to Huggy for taking the time to bring that interview to us. Now, I hope you enjoyed that discussion as much as I did, and I also hope you followed the show so that you never miss an episode. If you're not sure how to do that, just head to the website golfaustralia.com.au, that's golfaustralia.com.au, and click on the podcast tab. You'll find links there for both this podcast and our weekly offering looking at professional tournament golf, playing from the tips. I look forward to catching you next time here on The Thing About Golf.